What if the strongest marriages were built by people who were willing to talk about how they might actually end the marriage? Sounds a little crazy, maybe, yet let it settle into your brain for a hot minute. One key takeaway for me years ago when I read Stephen Covey's book, The Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, was the concept of begin with the end in mind. I explored this concept recently with a pilot wife coaching client who's new to marriage, new to aviation, and feeling a little frustrated. And so I thought about it and thought this is truly relevant for anyone who's married or contemplating getting married, whether in aviation or not. I'm Jackie Almer. This is the Pilot Wife Podcast. Learn more at pilotwifepodcast.com. And also, I am streaming this over on YouTube at Travel Life by a Pilot Wife. Now, why would one take on the contemplation of getting married and pre-planning how a divorce might look? Well, it's really not something that we typically talk about because most of us don't go into marriage expecting it to end in divorce. It's more really about being intentional with our goals, our life planning, and this aspect of life. Because let's face it, the statistics say the odds of it ending in divorce are pretty high. So things are stacked against us according to statistics. Now, I'm going to guess that you're a lot like me, and I don't want to be just part of anyone's statistic. The aviation lifestyle really does require a few things. And you know, I love to use aviation lingo, advanced planning, a checklist, so to speak, of how things are going to go. And then, of course, pre planning for deviations, alternate routes, and all of that. And it's really true, not just when on the job, but when traveling around the world on flights where we're hoping for an empty seat because that's the only way we're going to get on. We know that we have to pre plan and be prepared. And so often we plan more for our vacations than we actually plan for our lives. How many couples begin their marriage with no long term plan and certainly no exit plan? Most of us do. It's totally normal. So don't think that you're unusual if you haven't thought about this or navigated it. But when I was speaking with this coaching client and we were talking about different aspects, and she was sharing that she wasn't really sure that the aviation lifestyle was right for her, I asked her, do you have an exit plan? Do you have or have the two of you discussed what it would look like if you were to divorce? And she was like, no, no, we haven't. And so we kind of walked through that and walked through some of the things that I'm going to share with you today. We asked ourselves, is love enough to weather turbulence, any turbulence? We like to think when we get married that all we really need is love, right? And that will see us through anything. But let's talk about approaching marriage in the same way that we might approach an aviation flight plan. First of all, we know the destination. We're getting married, and our goal is to complete that life cycle together. So we have to plan the route, and it's important that we do that. And we have to have an alternate if needed. Now, an alternate plan doesn't necessarily mean divorce, it just simply means we're planning ahead. What if we hit turbulence? What if we hit those choppy air currents and all of that? What are we going to do to navigate that and get us back on track together? It's important because whether you stay together forever or eventually part, the best way we want to do either one of these is with dignity and respect for the other person. Now, ask yourself if any of this rings true for you. Most couples talk about the wedding, the attendance in the wedding, the honeymoon, the house, maybe even kids, but not the long term plan for a lifetime together or anything else. Now, each of you may have a vision, but let me ask you, have you actually sat down and discussed this vision together? And is it a shared vision? Are you headed in the same direction at the different phases of your life, or at least following the same flight plan a lot of the time? And this matters so much in aviation marriages because schedules and even careers can be extremely unpredictable. If you've been married in aviation for a while, you know exactly what I mean. Schedules get disrupted, bases close, companies merge. I mean, so many things happen that can completely disrupt a family and certainly careers. And we know also that one partner is often solo parenting a good bit of the time and carrying a large load of the responsibility. And without good communication, this can create small resentment that builds to big resentment and ultimately a rift that may not be reparable. Can I get a witness? An aviation career definitely dominates the family life in most cases. And without a doubt, the best time to have these conversations is before marriage. But of course, the second best time, if you're already married, is right now. It's never too late to write that script together for how you want your life to flow in all aspects of it. And especially if you're experiencing any type of tension right now. All right, so let's do a little bit of space travel into the future. And I want you to imagine yourself somewhere around 70 to 75 years old. Here are some questions to ponder that you might be asking about that. Where do I live right now? Remember, you're 70 to 75. Where do I live currently? Who am I with currently? What kind of relationship do we have? What does our day to day life look like? Are we healthy? Are we active? Are our kids and grandkids, if we have them, part of our lives? How much a part of our lives do we want them to be? And then a personal question for yourself is, do I still have purpose? Do I still have meaning? And then what is that purpose and meaning? Now ask, does my partner see the same future that I do? These are key. Now, let's wind the clock back a few years. Picture yourself in the 50 to 55-year-old range. Again, ask, what stage of marriage are we in? Are the kids grown or still home? Do we have kids? What does career look like for both of us? Are we financially secure? Are we financially headed down the path that we want to be? Are we still connected emotionally? And again, what's our plan for fun? Are we doing all of that? And am I happy and satisfied with the life that I've lived so far and with where I see us going for the future? This can be an extremely stressful stage. I know because I've navigated it, because these are the times when it's peak career years for certain. There are often teenagers with a lot of added expenses, such as college, postgraduate degrees. I mean, just a lot of different things that can happen. And there's often a good degree of burnout from years of these irregular schedules, unpredictable situations that can go with aviation. So that's an important time to factor in what you think that might look like and what you think you will do to navigate all that together in a very positive way. All right, now we're going to go back to the 40-year-old stage. And again, we're going to ask some questions. Do we have children? Are we balancing career and family well? Is one partner carrying too much responsibility? And who is that? Are we still making time for connection and fun? It's important to plot our lives across three key pillars: career, family, and play, and not necessarily in that order. Now, I tend to throw the financial aspect of it under career as well because we know that that's important. So, how are you doing with the first two, career and family? And the third one, fun and play, is often the one that gets neglected. So, how would you rate yourself in that area? Now, once you've mapped that timeline from 70, 75, now, my goal is to be a centenarian, so hopefully yours is too, but I just want to take us out to that particular stage because typically once you've reached that stage, you're going to be pretty consistent on up the chart if you stick around for a few more years or decades. So once you've mapped the timeline, let's really define what your core values are so that we can take it from where you are today and reflect those, or rather project those core values into the future. And I've talked about your core values on other shows and how to sit down and have those good communication conversations about that. Now, ideally, when you're mapping out core values, you really don't want to have more than 5 core values. And these values are what you begin to filter all of your decision making through. And I've used this process for years. And once I really started doing this, it completely simplified my life. Now, my own personal framework is built around what I call my 5 favorite F words, or my F bombs, as I like to call them. Faith. This is my spiritual path, my mindset, my discipline, commitments, everything that falls under faith. What is my faith in all areas of life? And then the second F is family and friends. I have that combined into one F, family and friends, which is really just relationships, connection, community. The third F is fun. That's the joy and adventure, travel, laughter, because I like to have this mantra, and that is if it's not fun, I'm not doing it. And by the way, these F's are not in any particular order. Then the next one is fitness. Now, fitness encompasses so much. I love this particular value because it incorporates everything. Certainly, physical and mental health is part of that, but I like to look at fitness and measure up how is my fitness in my faith? How is my fitness in my spiritual life, my mindset, my discipline? How is my fitness level in my relationships? And certainly, how is it in my finances? Which leads me to my final F word, which is finance. And that for me incorporates career, security, choices, because good finances truly does lend itself to better choices. And then I like to ask myself this question around those five core values. Are my decisions and life choices supporting these five core values? And if not, where am I off path? And I can say at 60, looking back, without a doubt, these five areas matter far more than most of the things that we stress about anyway. We tend to get caught up in so many different things in our 30s and 40s that can be kind of keeping up with the Joneses, even though I don't think that we intentionally set out to do that. It can be easy to get caught up in that, especially in this world of social media where we're constantly measuring our B roll on Instagram against everybody else's A roll. And I think you know exactly what I mean. And I can tell you, having just lost my mother and my father within 10 months of each other, I see more now than ever what really truly matters. And I can tell you for a fact, you've heard this before, but when one passes away, there's not a U-Haul that backs in to load up all of your tangible stuff or your bank account or any of those things. Now, I truly feel like those are important core values to support you in living well and having fun together and all of that. But more than anything, you can look at your core values and see that family and relationships and your spiritual life and so many of those and your mental and physical health for sure matter so much to truly support you in almost all of your life goals. So, how are you aligned on your key life goals? Once you understand these core values and you discuss them and see how they align with your partner, you might see some strong green lights, right? The flashing go that say, hey, we are doing great. And as you have these conversations, you might also see some yellow warning signs and even some red flags. Now, these do not have to be a deal breaker. They really, truly don't. I like to call myself an 80-20 gal. I believe in all of life there's an 80-20. I'm never going to find anybody that I am 100% aligned with. So I like to measure everything against the 80-20 rule. If I can find us aligned in 80% of key areas and there's 20% that, are lacking just a little bit, I'm good and I can go with that. But if it tips anywhere opposite that, if I am in a 70-30 or a 60-40, that tells me that there's going to be a lot more conflict that I personally want to invest in. So in those cases, those yellow warning signs and red flags might be a deal breaker for me. And that again is where you sit down, you evaluate things further, and you have those really powerful discussions. Because in any situation, you want to go in with your eyes wide open. How do you align with your partner around money, your spending habits, your saving priorities, fun and adventure? You want to have a plan for all of that. And then certainly, what is your retirement vision? Remember, we projected out into the 70s. And so you want to have a solid retirement vision that hopefully is aligned together. And then how are you aligned in the career area? Certainly, there are common pilot career expectations that most everyone in the family is aware of. But how does that work for you? Where do you, as the partner, fit into that with your own career goals and expectations? Where are you both with relocation possibilities? Because quite often that can come up in aviation, whether it's changing aircraft, whether it's upgrades, whether it's domicile closings, whether it's starting over with a new carrier, whatever it is, there are a lot of relocation possibilities that come up. And that can lend itself to great opportunity too when you go to work for a company and you find out what those options are of where to live or whether you have the flexibility to live anywhere you want. That just really does open up a wide range of possibility. And if you're aligned in that area and certainly other areas, you can have a lot of fun with that, literally relocating around the world and having different experiences. Now, that's not for everybody. I get that. But if you are an adventuresome person and so is your spouse, you could have a lot of fun with that. So play around with that. And then, of course, how are you aligned with family? Do you want kids? Do you both want kids? At what stage in your life do you want kids? What are your parenting styles and expectations? This is where it's very important to discuss your own upbringing, the pluses and the minuses with both so that you can sit down and determine shared expectations. It was funny, my son was about 10 months old when I went to my first play group, and the woman who was hosting it had a little boy who was probably about 13 months old. And he was doing what little kids do normally. He was walking around, and a couple of times he would smack the hand of one of the other toddlers who had a toy of his. And I remember watching her being so frustrated. She picked him up and spanked him and said, "Don't hit people." Did you catch that? She picked him up, spanked him, and said, "Don't hit people." And I remember thinking, whoa, things are way off with that. And I went home that very day and I said, I've made a decision. I'm never going to strike our children. I'm never going to touch them physically. And I can honestly say, never once did I do that. And I'm really super proud of that because I have very well disciplined, have very well behaved children, but I just found other tools and resources to do that. But not everybody grew up with that. Not everybody has that same expectation. So that's just an example of how you want to sit down and discuss those kind of things and make sure you're on the same page. And then, of course, it's important to talk about extended family roles or just family in general, because most of us know that family can be the greatest source of joy and fun and community and relationship building and bonding and all of that. I've witnessed a number of really large families get together and have amazing relationships. And I've also witnessed large families getting together and having nothing but conflict. I don't come from a particularly huge family, but I'm happy to say my family does harmonize together and create calm and peace and a lot of good times. But for a lot of people, family can be a major source of conflict. And major disagreements in any of these three key areas is often one of the biggest factors in marital stress, and then ultimately, sadly, divorce that often follows that. So, with that word, the big D out there, let's handle the hard question, which is how is the best way to handle it if divorce were to happen in our marriage? And again, this is the part that most couples avoid because, again, nobody goes into marriage thinking it's going to end in divorce. All of us know it's a possibility, but we tend to steer clear of the negative and having those conversations because we don't want to go there. And yet, it's so true that simply pondering the questions, that's not what creates divorce at all. What if you just asked your partner, what are the circumstances that might make you want to divorce me? And then be prepared to share what your own circumstances would be that might lead you to want to divorce your partner. Again, these are just adult conversations and they're best handled head on, calmly, without anger. The best time to handle them is not when you're in the middle of a conflict, but when things are super calm and peaceful and you're just having those conversations around your marriage, your partnership, your life vision, your goals, all the things that you want to create. And when you handle these conversations ahead of time, my belief is that it potentially creates fewer surprises as we go along. So, if divorce were to occur someday, ask yourselves collectively, how would you want to handle it? How would you want to handle that? How could you do your best to make sure that the divorce was amicable, that you still stayed friends despite anything else that may have happened? How could we protect our kids emotionally? And how could we protect ourselves emotionally too? How could we divide our assets in a fair and constructive way? And ultimately, how would we best try to maintain some friendship, some respect, maybe even dignity for both of us going forward? And again, a lot of that comes down to how you talk about the other person, how much of the story you share with friends and family members and even children. There's nothing wrong with making an amicable exit strategy ahead of time because preparedness often means that you're never going to have to execute on that plan. And that's how I really like to look at things. It's kind of like, um, like food prepping and a lot of those different type things. A lot of people find the reduced stress of having a plan and just being able to relax often means that they never have to call in and use any of that. And then I believe that a really important topic is how can we always put our kids first? How can and will we always put our kids first? Because when children are involved, the question really does become what would be the best planning and best parenting choices that we could make together and individually? Uh, and what should we make those be? It's really not about who's right, who's wrong, who wins, who's the villain, or any of that. More than anything, it's what could we do and what would it take for us to create the least amount of conflict and the best environment for our children so that they're going to experience the least amount of stress and turmoil and still allow them to thrive. Children, without a doubt, are going to benefit most when parents remain respectful partners in the parenting situation, even if the marriage ends. And often it does, but it doesn't have to be an ugly, constantly stressful situation. Ironically, but no surprise, couples who can talk openly about these things often build much stronger marriages. Again, when you can sit down without conflict and discuss that one question, what circumstance do you think it is that would make you want to divorce me? And vice versa. We can learn a lot from the aviation lifestyle, which is being aware of and planning for emergencies and unforeseen circumstances. This allows all of us to handle those situations better. When you think about it, airlines have contingency plans for when there are weather deviations or mechanical cancellations or any of that type thing. Doing the same for your family planning and your marriage will truly create those stronger partnerships and certainly stronger, more emotionally settled families. Whether you fly together for a lifetime or eventually land at different airports, you can still choose to navigate the journey with good communication and respect. Now, this leads me to another thought that can be very, very beneficial. And I will tell you, I didn't always do this in my own marriage, but looking back, I can see where it would have helped us avoid some turmoil. And that's to have the annual marriage flight review. Just like pilots have physicals and they take check rides, couples could do this on a yearly or certainly every 5 year relationship check in. And that's when you really want to discuss are those values, those core values, still aligned? And if you haven't discussed them, what are those core values? Are we still supporting each other's goals? And what needs adjusting in this particular area? This is the thing that keeps those small issues from becoming larger ones. And I will tell you, as a pilot wife for over 37 years, I'm now looking at a lifetime partnership at this point, or certainly hoping for that. I'm Jackie Almer. If I might answer any questions or support you in any way, please reach out going to pilotwifepodcast.com. Hey, pilot wife and fellow aviator, I'm Jackie Almer. With nearly 4 decades as a pilot wife, I'm here to help you navigate the ups and downs and turbulence that can go along with this lifestyle. To learn more about the resources and coaching I offer, go to pilotwifepodcast.com and make sure you're subscribed to my YouTube channel, Travel Life by a Pilot Wife.